Feeling the need for change is at the heart of your ability to make it happen. Welcome to Turning Inward. I'm Vivian Carrasco, your midwife, teacher, and host for this podcast. Together, you and I are going to navigate the interior life, and we're going to do that by unearthing our personal truths, our own insight, and our inner knowing. These are weekly teachings that are brought to you by hard-nosed scientific evidence focused on spiritual direction with integrity and self-awareness. In 2 words, this is your inner work. I'm with Martha Beck, and we are here to talk about Diana herself, an allegory of awakening. You launched your book into the world at the Austin Gathering of Wayfinders, and at the end of that entire experience, you extended the most heartfelt invitation I have heard in my short life to date. Do you want to get wild with me? So tell us about the book and how we can go into our own forest.
Well, the whole book, it's an allegory. A lot of people are like, what is that word? And it just means a story that is also meant to be read as a symbol. So for me, it's a symbol of what the human psyche does in this process that masters of other cultures have called awakening. And it's about finding the part of yourself that you would be if no one had ever harmed you and no one had ever tried to shape you. So it's the wild self. And I think that everyone needs to do it, but women in particular, it's a time for women to realize their own value. So the heroine of the book is like a baby thrown away on a trash heap, and she has all these adventures in store for her, but to start it, she has to go into a place that is beyond culture. So she's brown-skinned, she's a throwaway baby. The culture degrades her and devalues her, and so she has to go away. And we've all been degraded and devalued in one way or another, and it leaves scars. And I think the first step to healing is to go be wild, go away from culture for a while. And you can do that by just meditating or by sitting in your backyard or having a wild friendship, but that's the first thing you need to do is find wild wherever it shows up for you. So that's what she does, and we're here to talk about how all of us can do it, right?
Yes. So tell us.
I've been doing this life coaching thing forever, and it's so simple. I was just laughing with a friend about it. All I've ever said in my entire career has been telling people if something feels wonderful and makes you happy and healthy, it's probably good for you. And if something makes you miserable and sick and unhappy, chances are it's not good for you. And just getting back in touch with that is being wild again. Because no wild animal keeps doing something that hurts and won't do something that feels right. And yet humans do it all the time.
We do it way too often. We have a few questions from my current book club. We have a couple of lovelies who had some questions for you. Beth asked about the Roy within and what your thoughts are on our relationship with our very own Roy.
Yeah, she's right. The Roy within, his name is Roy Richards, which means Roy means king, and nickname for Richard, you do the math, right? So he's not a good character, but he looks great. He's like everything the culture values. He's a white male, very powerful, very muscular, very intellectual, very dominant, all the things that the culture venerates. And I was not free from that in my life. When I went off to Harvard, I was as competitive and as driven by that stuff as anyone at the age of 17. I had to learn that, achieving things in the eyes of the world was not a ticket to happiness. It just made me more anxious and more frightened because that's not good medicine. It isn't, but every billboard will tell you it is. Every TV show will tell you it is. I've been watching Glee with my son who has Down syndrome. We binge watch these TV shows, and everything is about being a star and just one moment in the spotlight. I love that show. I think it's a brilliant show, and it's just ego, 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 ego. And if you go that way, you are destined to suffer, and we all do it. We all do it. There's no way we can be raised the way we're raised and be free from that ego. So finding it and realizing that it's not the hero is so central to our own happiness.
Mm-hmm. Now, Todd asked, because, we're all book lovers, and in addition to loving on Diana herself, he wants to know what books are at the cutting edge of bewilderment so we can all go on this journey together.
Wow. There's a book coming out. I'm a huge fan of Byron Katie, and she's cited in the book. And her husband, Stephen Mitchell, who's, I think, one of the greatest writers in English, period, they're coming out with a new book. I think it's called A Mind at Home with Itself. It's Katie's Reflections on the Diamond Sutra, which is a Buddhist. It's the oldest book known to man, the oldest actual book. And Stephen, her husband, told me this is at the very edge of what is hearable, because it's about those moments when you not only break through your ego, but you break through the illusion of what we think the world is, and you start to see differently. And I've had that experience and explained by reading physics. Not explained it completely, but partially. It's like, oh, I get it. Physics says that it works this way, and my perception is that it works this way. No one else believes me, but the physics and my perception are in agreement. I love the book called I Am That by Nisargadatta Maharaj. I know that's not like the easiest word to spell, but just look under I Am That, and you'll find a powerful handbook. There are a lot of authors. Eckhart Tolle is another great one. People who just aren't in the dream anymore. And, get those books, and if they hit you, then go there. And if they don't, leave them on the shelf, because that's what I did. I had them on the shelf, and suddenly it just was like time to read them.
I know that feeling. That's happened to me, too.
Right? Like books have Loveless Gilbert's idea that stories want to be told. They'll find any author that wants to tell them. And that books also are like living things, and they pert on the shelf in your house or by your bed or whatever, and they lie there quietly until it's time for them to be read, and then they just shout.
I love that. Yep, they do. They fall in your lap.
Isn't that cool? They're alive.
It really is. They're alive.
And that's part of seeing through the dream, is you realize that objects are alive. And it's just a really different world.
Their whispers are just so much lighter than our voices.
That's so true.
Now, Lori wanted to pass on her giganormous gratitude for Finders Gathering. She was wondering about how you felt about it afterwards, and if you're considering similar events in the future.
I felt sort of emptied out in a really good way. I felt like I could say my whole truth, which a lot of people might think is very strange. I tried to get away with that at a seminar at Harvard. They would just have none of it. They would mock and scorn and think it was ridiculous and not have the vaguest idea what I was talking about. But as you probably know, I feel like there's a subpopulation of people now on the earth, and in this book I call it the Diana self, right? But that soul is moving over the world, and it will have its way with us, and it's ferociously loving. And I will do whatever feels like it. I had a near-death experience once, and I had the light and everything, and it said, just go towards everything that feels this way and go away from everything that doesn't. And I really don't have a plan. I have continuous creative response to whatever is present. I do feel like I've got a lot more books and conferences in me, but it's not me. It's everyone. It was everyone at that gathering. It wasn't me. I was just temporary focal point, and it will have its way. Yeah. So it may be me. It may be her. She may be the one to do it next. I don't know, but I just exist as a servant of the transformation of consciousness.
I'm right there with you, Martha. Now, the majority of our folks, of our lovelies and clubbies, were interested in this is part of the Bewilderment Chronicles, so it's only book 1.
Yep.
And so they're curious.
2 more. Roughly put, the first book is about the awakening of the divine feminine. The second book is about the awakening or the freeing of the divine masculine by the feminine. The feminine is what needs to free the masculine. Even in Diana herself, ultimately, the woman frees the man. It's just not in the way anybody had planned. He frees himself, but under her tutelage. And the second one it's about 2 things. It's about the awakening of the divine masculine, and it's about coming into belonging, because the feminine is used and exploited and needs to go wild, and the masculine is given power that corrupts it, and it needs to be loved. It needs to be integrated into, I use the image of a beehive in Diana herself, this community that is all for all always, where it's genuinely a community of integrity and love and not power dynamics. The third book, then, is about how the divine masculine and the divine feminine working together saved the world from these sort of eco-crisis that we're facing right now in reality.
Mm-hmm. Now, I have to share that I have a new hashtag. It's called the Mother of Men. So this idea of my boys are men, they're grown men. Loving our men into freedom is very heartfelt for me, because loving them to what they want to do, not what society wants to do. What kind of that freeing of that masculine by the feminine. It's a calling for all women, because all women have that healing energy.
Yep. And if we can say to them, I will stand by you. I will stand by you through my fear of poverty, through my need to depend on someone, on a man. I will stand by your happiness with you, and we will get this done together, instead of, well, if you don't do that horrible job, how am I going to survive? What about the kids? I mean, it's not that the masculine needs to abandon. The feminine needs to understand that the masculine can make its living through self-expression and not through self-enslavement.
Mm-hmm. Now, in Diana herself, you have a guide, The 7 Tasks of Bewilderment. And this is where I've been nudging my clubbies along a little bit about this not being serious. And I'll quote you on the interview with you, which sounds weird. There's nothing serious about awakening. There's no goal but happiness. Grim determination is part of the dream from which we're all trying to awaken. Bewilder yourself purely for the fun of it, and you're already halfway home.
Yeah. And it's like the book Waking Up on Your Shelf. There's something that wakes up inside you when it's time. And I have my own, cosmology, and it sounds completely nutty, but I believe it. And the reason is that I've experimented with it, and I was well and rigorously trained. And I know when something is possible and reliable, and bewilderment of the cultural self and the awakening of the soul work. It's real. So the process is there. There are many, many guidebooks to it. Some variation of how freeing yourself from from fear, freeing yourself to consume only what is nourishing to you and not what poisons you. And then it goes on there. The path doesn't matter. If that book works for you, great. If you like Nisargadatta or Buddha or Jesus, take any path. All the roads lead one place. But when it's time, you're going.
And what I hear you saying, and this is what I share with my clubbies, is this is a different kind of learning. It's not the kind of learning that's intellectual. It's the kind you experience directly.
Yep, that's what the Buddha said when he finally attained enlightenment. He opened his eyes after meditating for 3 days or something and said, this cannot be taught. So realized an absolute truth behind the apparent world that is so much more loving. And you cannot teach love as a lesson. You have to feel it. And only then do you know how powerful it really is. So, yeah, it's like go any direction you need to, but wake up, feel that. It's the only thing we're here to do.
Yes. Now, Martha, I can't believe this, but we're nearing the end of our time.
No, I don't hold back.
I know. I know. And I'm teaching myself not to, so it's all a process.
Wonderful.
Well, just what thoughts you just want to share with, I have 57 beautiful, loving souls that are journeying with me through this book. And in the last 2 book clubs, just the conversation, the engagement, what you said about belonging, it's just so meaningful.
Well, I'll give you a sneak preview of the second book. The enlightenment of the divine feminine in the form of the heroine in the second book turns out to be contagious. That it spreads, not unlike a plague of light, a plague of freedom, a plague of happiness. And that is what I believe is coming. That is what I believe is happening already. Many of the people in your book club, I feel it moving. You can walk down the street and see who's in the process and who's not. It's happening. So prepare to feel and think and do things that you have never thought possible. it's a metaphorical book, but the process is literal.
Mm-hmm. And liberating. It is. There isn't language to express it, but it is freedom.
Yes, it is liberation. The process we're undergoing is liberation, and we are being freed. You don't even have to do it. Just follow your heart. It's the oldest, most boring piece of self-help advice in the world, but we still don't take it, so I'm going to keep it. Day I die.
You're going to keep saying it till we listen.
Yeah, until I listen myself.
Me too. In and out like the waves of the ocean.
That's right.
I'm so honored with your time. Thank you so very much.
Such a gift to me, and I love all your Pete and wish them Godspeed on their journey.
Thank you.
If you want more help moving forward and breaking out of a negative mental pattern, I personally host an online community of practice for smart, successful women and a few super cool dudes that gives you more support, tailored training, and an unlimited professional coaching. Visit my digital home at viviancarrasco.com to learn more.